Thank you very much, Arthur, and thank you all of you for being here. What I'm going to say is to try to lay out a map which might seem to be uncontroversial. We have the big nature up there, the alien nature, but we also have the very small nature. This is actually a coronavirus to the left of the upper side. We have here then to the left side, we have examples of human cultivation of nature, including the rewilding of elks that I will show you later. And of course, we have the human culture entanglement, which is, for the time being, the central interest of people working in social in the social sciences and in the human sciences. But as I will try to argue, there are these are not only there, but they are also irreducible to one another. And this is where might be more controversial, because I think actually that if we look into this distinction again, then I would say that what I call Eco 1, and I'll come back to my colleague who has developed this too, then this is a sort of an endangered species in contemporary social thinking about ecology, because people say, well, there's nothing left, which is not having human traits and traces. And then we have Eco 2, nature as cultures, and I would say we are also the outside planners. We also take distance to the world. This, of course, is also criticized by many. Think of Bruno Latour about the criticism of the setting up boundaries between ourselves and the rest of the world. But I would like to argue that, in a sense, we have to do that also because we are not only in Eco 3 sharers of nature, subjects among subjects, but we are also actually human ethical subjects. So we actually responsible for the world. So and I'll give some examples of this from art. This is Hokusai's famous picture under the wave of Kanagawa. And often you only see the waves in illustrations. I have a colleague who has this, but only the wave, the crossing of the wave. But it's actually about nature being dangerous to us. And in the background, we have the holy mountain on the Fiji island. So I think it's a very expressive sense of this. And I think that even if there are microplastics in this in these waves today, actually it is actually an alien, non-human nature. And then we go to Peter Bruegel with the harvesters, and you will see here that the straws are very long. There are no straw shortening breeding as we have it today. And this is a hard work, a typical example of a human cultivation. But what then about the other, the enmeshment, the ecology 3? Well, we have these very critical pictures, of course, of the human traces here of garbage, but we also have this very positive reading of the Anthropocene context in Nicole Heller's pictures here, and you often have this duality there between something being gloomy and catastrophic and going towards hell or being hell, and then also something that this means that we are nature ourselves. So there is this duality, I think, in our culture. So what I want to do then is to begin I will try to do it to keep it short, because Susan already was there yesterday. Thank you, Susan Bratton, for that. And then I go on with some cases from Denmark, and then I come back to the typology and try to say a little more about this. So we have many generic definitions of sciences of ecology. None of them will work entirely, but this is a very one that you often meet, and interaction, the study of interactions between individual organisms and their environments, together with other individuals of their own species, and so on. If we then go into the climate sciences, then there's a much more of an emphasis on structures and networks and so on. And the individual organisms actually may seem to recede from the perspective, because you cannot do both all the time. You have to work it together some way. And so we have this bewildering number of sub-disciplines in the sciences of ecology, many more than I list there. This is from the Encyclopedia of Ecology, a 4-volume work in 2008, 4,000 pages. I have only read very few of the articles, I must admit. But again, we see here an interest in nature per se. I mean, natural interactions, say, as if we did not exist. And then also more and more also an emphasis on the human impacts, on toxicology, degradation, air pollution, flood drought, water pollution, and so on. I think that still at that time in 2008, we really had the understanding that the science of ecology was a natural science. And I just have to say that many of my colleagues within the science departments of Copenhagen University still believe that ecology is a question of natural science. And then it's only something that they do out there in the environmental humanities. That's nice, but that's like only something on the top of the real cake, the real beef. So in that volume, philosopher Kevin de la Plante actually made a point very much like this, that is a pluralistic discipline that spans both the physical, the social, and the biological sciences. And he also went on to say that it is a synthetic science that also includes human social organizations and so on. And I'm just saying that this is what I think most would agree to today in our scientific communities. But at that time, in 2008, he described this as a minority position in 2008. So this is where we are. But then we can also, just like natural scientists can say, I'm not interested in ecological thinking. That's their idea, their playing field. Do that if you like so. So also it goes the other way around, that there can be also a neglect of something that is more than human, the endangered species of ecology 1. And I just take one example, which is also, of course, controversial, the hypothesis that we live in the Anthropocene age, and we certainly do. Whatever you call it, the great acceleration, it is not. But again, there's a difference between discussing this, the meaning of this term within geology. Do we live in a human age simply? So this was then actually denied by the International Union of Geological Science. They were divided, and the reason was that there were areas where you could not detect a human, you cannot detect a human footprint. But I think that the whole concept, rather than being taken as a granted, we now live in the Anthropocene, don't we? Then it raises many questions. When did the Anthropocene take off? Was it already with agriculture after 1650, with the new sciences, or was it after the Second World War or in the 60s? And of course, you see how many things actually go up in the 1990s concerning climate change, for example. But the next point is, does the Anthropocene mean that there's no real nature left? And I think this is a very often heard or presupposed. Simply, Is it something intrinsically bad? Yes, it is, if that were the case. Or is it a mixed bag of good, evil opportunities? And Catherine Richardson, who has been part of these discussion all the time and of the 9 planetary boundaries and so on, she says very frankly, the Anthropocene is a third driver alongside geosphere and biosphere, and of course we also have a stratosphere and so on. So I'm just saying that we can sometimes have very different use of these things. And we can have a disinterest also in science, and I find this, for example, in Timothy Morton's work, which is very much worth reading. It's very, very thrilling to read, but also very depressing to read. This is his book, Hell, saying that we actually now live in hell already. But he also is actually saying, rest assured that I'm not going to preach to you, no religion. That I'm not going to bring you some ecological facts, no science. There no ethical or political advice. This is too late, perhaps. And also no grand tour of ecological thinking that is of other thinkers. So what I just want to say is that I think we face a disjunct between ecological sciences describing the breadth of human-natural relations, but often with a focus on specific natural regions only, and the emphasis of social scientists and eco-philosophers on entanglement, on eco-3. And I would then say that we still have very significant aspects of ecology 1 amongst us, and it needs to be articulated, and it can be articulated also religiously. And also we need to see that we might be a creature among others, but we have some specific ethical responsibilities. So we cannot just say that they think and we are all in a parliament, because the plants and the lizards are not sitting there in our parliaments. So I want to be a little demythologizing, perhaps. Then I here also refer to want to just point to the fact that some of the words used in our discussion are actually obsolete or have been criticized. Nature, for example. Nature, very much so. But also ecology, because everything is ecology, and also environment. And I give some examples of that. And now I bring Emmanuel Kocha in, because I'm really very fond of his writing. Timothy Morton, he already wrote in 2010, nature fails to serve ecology well. And down there also, ecology can do without the concept of something of some kind called nature. So it's simply too abstract, nature. It's too scientific. It's too objective, and that's wrong. So I am actually disagreeing with him, but I'm just saying that it is an important voice. More interesting, I think, is the view of Emmanuel Kocha. Now that the home has become as large as the planet, any notion of geography and any notion of genealogy is demolished. The birth of the world home marks the end of ecology too. Because everything, we live in a boundless home. Here we have stones, and here we have timber and trees. So everything we live in here is actually made out of nature. And he then continues to say that the earth is, in a sense, not our mother. The connections are stronger. We have not left her. We are flesh of her flesh. Our life is intimately bound to her body. We live in her body and on her body. And I'll come back to this because it's very central also to the view of deep incarnation in my own theological thinking. So we come to the second part, the Danish case, floodings in the city of Vejle. And here we have Vejle. It is there, 4 dots under the nose, if you can see that, where there is a fjord, a rather broad fjord there. And it's a big important city in Denmark, which has already small cities. Number 5 in Denmark. It's a very affluent city. It's really a very nice city. It was chosen also as one of the 100 resilient cities by the Rockefeller Foundation in 2017. And I would argue because it is not resilient. So you are saying it's a resilient city because here you really need to do something. And actually they also do. My own son is involved in this project also. So I thank him for bringing my information. It's placed now also in a valley. We have the fjord to the right, and we have the lowland wetland to the west, and we have actually also water coming down from the north and from the south, and this is how it is. And we have, I apologize for this swirling thing there that I could not get rid of, but I'm just saying that we had 2 100 years accidents or occurrences or events in 2024. And they actually, they think there will be more of them. More water, more, and we have this notion of also of a perfect storm. The perfect storm is when we have the water coming in from the fjord, from the left side, and then we have rain in the other lowland areas. And the lowland areas are really key also to my argument, because this is where we have agriculture. And this is also where we have private farmers. So we are now making a green 3-part in Denmark, which means that they have actually to plant a forest. And they will be repaid for that. Or they can continue, but then we will put more and more tax on them each year. So it's a very controversial thing. But the thing is here that the city we have in the midst, and we also have this dike. But the real problem for the city, for the mayor, is actually this perfect storm, water coming in from 3 sides, 4 sides. But from an ecological perspective, the real problem is that when we have heavy rain on the left side, this is then going through the dike and into the fjord, with the consequence that there's no life there. It's one of our broadest fjords, and they set up. My son Johannes did that too. Set up simply saying we want to see how many fish are left. There are no fish left. At that time, they will come back. I'm sure it's not a dead for good fjord, but still. So they made a burial. A very courageous woman pastor, Cecilia something. She actually made this burial, and you see there were many attendants to this burial of the life and the fjord of Vejle. And I think it's really a very good sign that here's something very important. Now we go to conservation and also to the rewilding. And I'm just saying we have something called Gribskov National Nature Park, and you can hear how all things are together here. Park, national nature. And it is placed there now towards Sweden on Sealand. That's also where I live. So I live there in Nødebo, down at in the angle there. And this is old state forest, which is around also 50 kilometers up. It is the biggest forest area in Denmark. And of course, we love forests in Denmark. This is an example of a very romantic picture. We walk there, we a little, and we talk, and everything is beautiful there, and it's planned, and it has been taken care of for 400 years by the kings and queens of Denmark. And now it looks like this here, and then you would say this is terrible, but this is what it takes to make a rewilded area. So you have to stop the draining of the area, make it wet again. Many trees will die. It's not very nice to see. So there will be some resistance also among my co-dwellers in Nødebo. who say we are not interested in that, and we are not interested in reintroducing elks, which is not just as a zoological experiment, but it's because that elks and other big grazers actually make sure that there's light in this there. So it is a very contentious matter. We try to keep it very, very calm. And the national management is there, and we have very local people there. We also have those who own parts of these forest areas and also in between, sitting together, and it is a very contentious thing. Our own postdoc, Matti Weisdorf, is studying this as an anthropologist. Now going up to the more principled point of view, you can say we have models of that presuppose a nature-culture dichotomy, and models that want to go beyond nature-culture dichotomies. This is Büscher and Fletcher's very interesting book in my mind, also very politically animated, but I think it's very good to think with. Mainstream conservation means setting up boundaries like parks. Actually, we are going to do this in Gribskov Park. We are setting up fences 2.5 meters high, but you can look through them. It is with steel, and we need to do that in order to have elks and horses and other animals there. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous for us. But or otherwise, it would just dissipate. Then we have neo-protectionism, which they say is a beyond capitalism way of thinking, arguing against the human use, stay away from protected areas. And just saying that in that sense, we are really beyond capitalism in Denmark, because these are state-owned, and we are no longer allowed to use the timber from the forest in the state-owned parts of the forests. And E.O. Wilson famously said that, it is Wilson, not Wickelson, said that we need to set aside 50% of the whole Earth span in order to have a future for the world. So that's a kind of neo-protectionist thinking, and we have that also in this nature national park, because there are actually rather big protected areas for the sake of birds, and also for the sake of giving the trees the time to grow, and also being the hosts and of very many different small animals that you don't see. Then we have the beyond nature culture dichotomies. New conservationism say, and it is that you have to improve the nature-human relations by management, and you could say these are techno-positive readings of the Anthropocene. I'm just saying we actually also doing that. It's very expensive to make national nature parks. Very expensive. I just want to say, so the Green 3 part ended up with 80 billion Danish crowns. 10 of them were actually paid from Novo Nordisk, a firm that some of you might know, but it's very expensive to go for a new afforestation in Denmark, so that we now have 14% of areas as forest, and we will have 24 up already by 2035. It will be very difficult to do that in 10 years. And I'm not sure that we will succeed fully, but I think it's very interesting, and we are out in our group, in the Carnal group, with discussing with these. Then we have the idea of convivial conservation beyond capitalism. Everything has to live from their own capacities and with their own needs. A very nice Marxian idea. I think that this is starting out from political ecology, critical of an economic colonialization of nature, but this is a colonialization, just not for an economic purpose, not for a nature, made for nature lovers, but actually made for for biodiversity, increasing biodiversity, and then we also hope that the climate footprints will be slower. But the point is that you are living with very many different species than our own human species. So these are two very good Germans here. But I ask whether this taxonomy of two alternatives, they say it's alternatives, it's positions that they line out, is that actually not rather four different strategies that we have to bring together from a more practical perspective? This is a way of thinking that also is present in my own thinking about ecology 1, 2, and 3 that I will now come back to. So this is Cecilie Rubaugh, who is my colleague and co-PI in the so-called Carnal Center that has been funded by the Velux Foundation. Maybe some of you have some windows from Velux. They are paying for us for, it's not a big thing, but it's still significant perhaps. She actually proposed early on this distinction between eco 1, 2, 3. And I really try to work with her and also on this typology. And I follow her and we have ardent discussions. She's saying, for example, you theologians, you seem to be much more interested in the nicety of ecology 3. we think of the catastrophic footprints. It was not a last statement, but this came up in the discussion between a group of anthropologists on the one side, Cecilia and Matti shown earlier, and a group of theologians, Mikkel and myself. And then we have, where are you, Anders? And then we have Anders as our philosopher, the wiser than every one of us, who is doing a PhD for us. So the point is that the environment of eco-it is non-human, it's wild, raw, but also potentially enchanted. But I would then say, and that's my criticism of my friend, my colleague, anthropologist, that for me it is not important that it is untouched. So say the elk is then in a sense rewilded into our, coming from Sweden, 6 to 8 elks. And they are, of course, belong to ecology 2, you could say, they are plant. But they also will appear to me as an example of an ecology 1. Something that is not me. Something that is very different from me, and still I am taken by it. And so it is not about that something needs to be pristine and also or untouched. And I would even see that from a religious perspective, looking into the eyes of a newborn child is also an ecology 1 experience. You see something other than yourself, even if you are the mother or the father, or even if everything is actually coming out of the life of the mother. So it's not about being untouched by human, it's about how it is and how it appears to us. The second is then nature as cultured. And then there's a lot of discussion about landscapes, gardens, cities, and that is clear. And I'm saying that we also have to think about new technologies. And this is not a very popular view among ecological thinkers. They call me an engineer sometimes or something, or like a modernist. And we have heard this discussion here. And I'm very much in agreement with Mike's view yesterday that if we don't do that, we will have this is very important, say, bringing back the carbon footprint in Denmark to 70%, bring it down 70% from 1990 has only been possible by electric cars. And then we have the question about lithium, where does it come from, mining, and so on. So, and then of course we have Eco 3, and I think it's very easy to work with that. Also, I think as a way of thinking what religion is about, to understand that nature is not just out there, but we are ourselves creatures. So it comes very close to us. We are living among other agential creatures, dogs, cats, and so on, but also anything else. And I think that this is what goes early, what goes easy. Ecology 1, I would say, then remains a feature of the way the world is and appears to us. And it's interesting that Bruno Latour, who is well known for going against any separation between nature and culture, that he says, well, we should not de-animate nature. They are actually animal, living, thinking, voice, speaking animals like us, or even plants. But there will be some who say, no, we are beyond that point. There's no ecology 1. I will also try to come back to some of the proponents or supporters of ecology 1 in a while. So the point is then, we also have legitimate human ends for this. Here we have to think of the survival of human beings, especially now when we live in a highly populated world of more than 8 billion people. You cannot both say, great, we congratulate you, we are so many people, and then say that the world is no longer warming, but simply boiling. These two things have something to do with one another, and I know it's a very political sensitive issue. Ecology 3 then is really a mixed bag, and I will come back to this also here. So my point is that there's also some sense of some 3 different forms of ethical sensibilities related to the 3 ecologies. There is actually need for an ethics of human self-withdrawal, just like we had conservationism earlier. And we have to see that the aesthetics of nature is central. And this is a point made by Albert Schweitzer, Holmes Rolleston, the Sami protesters against a new water energy work, the Greenlanders saying no to mining. We have actually very many people saying that this is important, and it is carried by an aesthetic sense of awe of the multiplicity of the forms of creation. And I think we need to really see that this is a first order ethical commitment. Then also we have to develop an ethics of care and intervention that is aware of the human stewardship for the intrinsic values of nature, as well as for the human needs. And so we have both. We have many things to care for, and we cannot say, well, we are like all other beings. If we say that, then we have no ethics. We have no humanity. We cannot do that for the sake of nature. We cannot do that. Ecology 3 is then an ethics of entanglement, which builds on natural processes, a constant sort of resonance. So I'm very much taken by Hartmut Rosa, the German sociologist, and also Steen is working with him now. So we have to understand that everything is actually related to everything else, but not just a nice relation, but tensions, sometimes growing into conflicts. So we have this sense of resonance as well as dissonance, I would say. So values of nature are not anthropocentric, I would say, but they are anthropogenic. We have to say that we are the evaluators. We have to be honest about that. But I think there are also evaluation going out there, but this is not the point here. So now I just want to come to the eco-theology 1 from a religious perspective, and I think we have the old tradition of the book of nature and the book of the Bible. The Bible is small, containing you can actually read it. You can never finish reading the book of nature, but God is expressed in both books, very clearer in the book of the Bible than in nature, for nature is also very dangerous and not full of promise only. We will all die, for example. And we have this notion that I really like in Ephesians 3:10, and I'm now speaking from the point of view of a Christian eco-theologian. God's wisdom is multicolored. It is actually said poikilos. Poikilos already means colored, but it's just translated as manifold. But it's much more beautiful here, much more ecology one-like here. And even in those who have said we cannot make a natural theology leading from the world to God, like Martin Luther, he could write sun, moon, heaven, earth, Peter, Paul, I, you. We are all words of God. Not only the words of God in the Bible, but you are also the words of God. In fact, only a single syllable or letter by comparison with the entire creation. If you really examined a kernel of grape thoroughly, you would die of wonderment. These are, in a sense, examples of a creation theology. I should have written this with yellow also. And then we go one step further back to Bonaventure's exemplarism, who could say that there's a formative power, a divine formative power everywhere in the universe, so that the face of the multiform wisdom, which is Christ, is present in the vestiges of the divine work, he says. It's very instrumental for my own way of thinking Christology, not only as related to a human person living 2000 ago, but actually to Christ as present and expanded into the world of the material. Yes, thank you. And then I just want to say who are the contemporary proponents. They are actually, I think they are indigenous spiritual traditions. This can be debated perhaps. It's also eco-theologians coming from different religious traditions, Rolston and others like that. But again, the main thrust of eco-theologians today are emphasizing three, which I understand. We have wildlife enthusiasts, we have conservation enthusiasts. We also have actually people who say that nature is as it is before us. There are pre-human mechanisms and laws to nature. So now we come to the Eco 2 in theological perspective. We have these very classic points here: multiply, fill out the world, and subdue it. Radar. And then we also have Adam and Eve receiving the task of both killing and keeping the earth. And the term keeping is very interesting. It's called shamar, and it is actually also in the Aaronitic blessing. God bless you and keep you. That's the same word, shamar. You can almost hear the difference between radar. I have two Jewish here, so let us try. Radar and shamar have different also vocal forms. So I think that this is something where we just have to say that we have to do an longitudinal stewardship, and we have done that for many years. And it's interesting that Kocha suddenly came out with this statement about, he said, in Judaism and Christianity, God relates to the world not as a simple governor, but as a father. And if then human beings are created in the image of God, they should be as fathers and mothers and siblings also to other animals. And I bring in the example of the biohouses. So we are actually lived together with the animals until 1600. And we have James Lovelock, who is saying that we must admit that the old people, holy people founding the great religions, they would have no inkling of the consequences. But now we face the hazards loom. And now he says that our religions has not yet given us the rules and guidance for our relationships with Gaia. He states that his own understanding of Gaia is probably unconsciously guided by his Christian thinking and upbringing, but he says that it's hubris. Both the humanist version and the Christian versions of stewardship, we are no more qualified to be stewards or developers of the earth than goats to be gardeners. That's a very wonderful quotation. I think it is there. It is a critical view of the ecology's two perspective. And then we come to the last point. We have then also ecology 3, and here's just a very simple picture of it. I'll say that we nature and humanity are actually, there are stippled lines there between humanity and nature. God is in everything. There's also more than God. There's more to God than there is in the world. But I just want to state that this is my last slide, that as creatures we live on Mother Earth in one sense. You can understand this out of Genesis 1:11, about the earth. God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yield seed and bear fruit with the seed in it. So there is a divine creativity within the world of that God has created. So it's a constant creation. The Hebrew word for grace is rahim, meaning the mother's womb. And if we think this through, then it means that we are not just living on Mother Earth, but also in it. And it's interesting that by reading Kochia, one can be brought back to very classic aspects of Christian theology, and that's where I end. It is to say that God is the encompassing reality present in, under, and also in some particular revelatory cases as. So there is both a general being there, and there is a manifestation of that, revelatory a manifestation of that. And it's interesting. It is interesting to see that the creation theology of Thomas Aquinas and Martin Luther actually agreed on this point, that there's a radical divine in esse, being in the world of creation. And the proposal of deep incarnation is similarly one that actually thinks on the basis of an ecology 3, moving from the concrete body of Jesus, ecology 1, here even an historical body, to the always problematic human nature aspects of Eco 2. It was not an easy engagement between Jesus and his contemporaries at that time. And there's a lot of sin involved in that, as Christians would say. And also that deep incarnation means that Christ is united with the whole nexus of creaturely being and becoming, the flesh of materiality in all its different forms, Eco 3. And I also think that we need to develop a much stronger theology of the spirit as a presence of the uncreated energies of the divine. I would like to hear more about this from you, in the midst of limited energy exchanges. But I think that the green transition has very much to do with having access to energy that does not fossilize or pollute the world, and which has very limited costs for the environment. And how is this to be thought in a sort of a theology of the divine spirit, which I think would have to be thought of in terms of an ecology 3. So the first thing said about the spirit in the long Nicene Creed from 381 was that the Holy Spirit is a giver of life. And so it is also about the resurrection of the body in the end, and also looking forward to the renewed or to the new world. So the world is part of this spirit thinking from the beginning. So, thank you.